already been scanning?
Yes. So I'm running it now. It's running. It's scanning. Every one of these little spikes is EMF activity that's occurring.
How very cool is that, David?
And then there's a data readout over here that's telling you what the values are. And the frequencies we're looking at over here, we're looking at 2.16 hertz, 13 hertz, 11 hertz. It's all very low frequency stuff.
And is it recorded? Is it spiked?
It's being recorded. It's being recorded as you're looking at it right now. That's being recorded in real time. Going on to that hard drive. This data logger here is what we're looking at. The data is coming into here. It's being logged and stored on this hard drive right here for later evaluation. Over here is like the brains of everything. I have this device here. It's a digital signal processor. It's called the London Blue 100. It costs about $2 grand. And it's essentially a big empty box. And you go in and you write a program what you want the box to do. It has essentially, I think, 16 inputs and 4 outputs. So what we did with that is we wrote a program that basically has the control over the coils, which here's my coil control, and I can put notch filters in. I can do a lot of different stuff to adjust what I'm looking at and what I'm not looking at.
Would that be the sensitivity levels? Or?
It's not sensitivity, but if like I wanted to block out a specific frequency, say I was having a problem with 60 cycles up here, which I'm not because there's no power up here.
Right. Okay.
So say I had a problem with 60 cycles, I can filter it out going over here and notching out 60 cycles.
Oh, I see. Okay.
In other words, I could go over here to say like 60's right about here. I could take and build myself a curve where I could roll this down and take that stuff completely out of the mix if it was a problem, if it was an issue. I can go over here and be even more specific where I could go into here and adjust these to where I could literally remove an overlap, which right now the overlap is set at 60 cycles. I could literally separate these two right here and completely drop 60 cycles out of the system onto that. Wouldn't even be an issue. And then I have the mic controls where we have 4 microphones in there at the same place. Same thing, you know, we have the ability to tailor what we're doing in here as far as adjusting the equalization. We can alter ourselves to the acoustics of the room so that we can put a relatively flat response on the audio. We've got gain reduction, compressor limiters. Here's our essential gain controls where we can jack up what we're listening to and that sort of thing. So all these things considered, we're taking 4 audio signals and 4 EMF signals, putting into a processor and being able to compare them and to compare the levels in each sensor.
Good grief, David.
By doing that, what's really cool is, and here's actually the program. This is what's going on in the box. So we have 4 microphones, 4 coils. They're coming into what we call Casper Blue 100.
Yes.
And we're running it in here, and if we open up this processing object here, we can see exactly everything that's going on in there. So this whole program that's running right now is this block diagram that I'm showing you here. In other words, to design this system, we drop and drag components. And once we wire everything up, we upload this to the box, and that tells the box what to do, how to process. So this is kind of the brain of the whole thing here. Coils come in here. We have coil preamp. We have a 60 hertz notch filter built in that takes 60 hertz out of it before it even goes into the system. So 60 hertz coming out of the wall is no longer an issue at all. It's not even red. Then we have all these various stages of gain because we're looking right at the noise floor. So the stuff we're looking at is very, very low level and is just above the natural noise floor that's created by natural occurrences in the environment.
Right.
Because we're surrounded by EMF all around us all the time. The trick is looking for the right EMF
and finding that, and finding something that is, you know, wayward and shouldn't be there. And that's kind of what we're doing here. What we're doing is we're comparing different signal levels that are emerging in each one of the sensors in there. Now when it finds a signal that is emerging, and the signal strength is variable to each one of those sensors in there, it's going to tell me about where in the room that opening is occurring. And when it tells me that, we can go to that spot and we can put a ton of different electrical equipment there, sensing equipment, to measure things like gravitational field, and we find that the gravitational field is fluctuating along 3 different axes. We have temperature fluctuations, we have barometric pressure drops, we have static energy increases, we have elevation and
Sorry, David, excuse me.
elevation and ions. We also have radiation spikes which are occurring. Like right now we're measuring gamma radiation in that room there, and that's what we're getting. Those spikes are each little gamma radiation spikes that are occurring in the room.
Now, is there natural sources of gamma radiation that can occur?
If there is, everyone would be dead of cancer.
Well, I was just curious.
No, gamma radiation generally comes from stuff like plutonium, uranium, radium, radioactive isotopes, or it can come from cosmic rays. What happens during a paranormal event is we have something called a subatomic particle annihilation. That happens when a wormhole begins to form. It requires a certain type of matter to stabilize. It's called exotic matter. Exotic matter is matter with a negative mass. Cool stuff, but when it comes into contact with our matter, it annihilates. You know, it's like antimatter. Well, when it annihilates, it gives off a burst of gamma radiation. Now, if it annihilated at an atomic level, there'd be a huge crater where we're standing.
Yeah.
But it doesn't. It annihilates at a Planck level or at a subatomic level. And because of that, you have these high bursts of gamma radiation. Well, those high bursts of gamma radiation create other things that we measure and think we're measuring ghosts. But what we're really measuring is this portal opening up. The gamma radiation will cause ion counts to soar. I mean, you could be measuring ions and it's like, 23 parts per cubic, million, and then all of a sudden it goes up to 270,000 per cubic meter. And everyone goes, well, there's a 10% accuracy. We don't care. We're looking at a ratio of gain here. It's a tremendous ratio of gain. All right. We're not doing exact ion count. We're looking at ratios. The other thing that's occurring is that cold plasma gets generated. Gee, Dave, what's cold plasma? Well, plasma is like the fourth state of matter, and it's a high energy type of material that's a byproduct of high energy discharge. Plasma can be created by, the best time that you can see like hot plasma is like when the guy is trying to replace the fuse on the power lines and he misses, and it's kind of raining and drizzling, and you hear this big boom, and then there's this glowing ball that kind of floats along and hums for a second, and then it just kind of fizzles out. That's hot plasma. Temperature of it's probably about 11,000 degrees. What we're dealing with is cold plasma, which is like neon. Neon is a form of cold plasma. But cold plasma has to be encapsulated in some type of stabilizing field. And it's encapsulated in an EMF field. So if you come into contact with a plasma, guess what? Yeah, there really is such a thing as an orb. A cold plasma orb can cause the hair on your body to stand up, because it has a high static field associated with it. It can stimulate emotional responses in your brain. You could feel great sadness, you could feel elation, you could feel fright, you could feel many different types of emotional responses based on whatever the frequency of the encapsulating field is, depending on your own sensitivity to it and how you react to it. So there's a lot of physical things that can occur. You feel like you may have been touched. You may feel a mild shock. You may feel a lot of different things if you come into contact with a cold plasma orb. They generally last 5 to 10 seconds, and then they ground out on the ground. When they ground out, there's generally a little audible pop that occurs. So you may hear a little pop and wonder what you just heard. It's probably a cold plasma orb discharging the ground. Now, all these orbs that you see on photographs, they're dust. All right? I mean, most of these things, a cold plasma orb is very rare. In a paranormal event, you may see 1 or 2 form. And the only way to photograph them and know that you've really got something is to use like a 2-camera shoot, where you're using 2 synchronized cameras with a photographer trigger and you're firing at the same area from 2 different angles at the same time. And then if you capture some anomaly that's in both pictures in the same physical place in the room, then it's not dust. You've got something else there. Cold plasma, we first sampled one back in 2009 is when we first captured one. We weren't able to measure one until 2010, late 2010, because we burned up 7 or 8 meters trying to figure out how much to shunt the energy coming off of one. There's essentially anywhere from 270 to 350,000 volts, but the current's roughly around 15 to 25 milliamps. So it's low current but very high voltage. So it's not like you would get electrocuted or anything or shocked significantly by one, but you could have some type of physical stimulation from it. So another byproduct of this wormhole opening up. Well, when this wormhole opens up, it creates a paranormal event horizon, what I call, which is an area probably about 2 meters max in size. And in that 2 meter area, things happen. You'll capture EVP. You might see an apparition. You might see some type of fog. You might see some type of visual anomaly that's occurring. Some people sometimes they see little wavering lines like you see on a hot highway in the summertime. You might see the room kind of flicker in that area. All those things are associated with this formation of an Einstein-Rosen bridge, essentially. So what this device is able to do for us is to allow us to predict the location of that paranormal event horizon a few moments before it happens.
Wow.
And that gives us time to get in position with the right stuff and start measuring it when it does materialize. And that's how we've been able to gather a lot of data. That's how we know that, there's barometric pressure drops, there's temperature fluctuations, there's all this. So what we believe, it's a very special kind of wormhole where it has 2 throats and it's a single throat with 2 tubes. And these tubes counter-rotate. One rotates in one direction, one rotates in the other. But they have a common funnel that goes into it. And in that funnel area is where paranormal stuff happens. And it's where we experience it. That's where the interface between us and their reality occurs. And the reason I say there's 2 tubes is because a wormhole is essentially a one-way construct. Energy can travel one way in it. Well, energy is traveling 2 ways in this construct. It's coming and it's going as well. And we know this because we're able to inject energy into it, and it's certainly putting energy back out that we can measure in our environment in the shape of EMF, EVPs, other sorts of energy, telekinetic activity, that sort of stuff. So it's a very particular type of wormhole that has 2 tubes. The whole, even though the tubes actually rotate, the throat itself also rotates, and there's kind of a vortexual effect that occurs, which makes the entire construct, if we were able to step back and look at it, it would look very much like a double helix, which I find is very interesting, because most of the patterns that we see from the micro level to the macro level in nature are copycats of from small to large. I mean, an atom is a model of a solar system, is a model of a universe. You take it to the tiniest level and you take it to the greatest level. The patterns keep making the same sense. Same thing here. We're dealing with a very similar pattern. The only difference is we're dealing with something that we associate with DNA as a double helix. Well, we're looking at maybe the secret of life here. So why wouldn't it follow the same type of pattern, energy-wise? Seems to that it does. So, while a certain amount of it is speculative, we do know that we're very close to writing a scientific paper right now on what we think is the discovery of a terrestrial wormhole on the planet, which would be huge because it's a theoretical construct. Albert Einstein and I think it's Henry Rosen, came up with the full theory back during their work on the theory of relativity. So it's been a theoretical construct in physics since the turn of the century, or at least the early 1920s. So to actually have physical proof of the existence of these would be a huge discovery in physics. And like I said, we're pretty close to writing a paper on it. We've gathered enough data to show significant indicative evidence of wormhole formation.
Well, I know, like in the scientific field, like a lot of times they just blow it off. Do you think that they'd blow it off with that too?
I'm sure they will when it first appears. It'll be ridiculed and everyone will say, oh, poo-poo. And until 2 or 3 more scientific groups duplicate the stuff and get the same findings, you know, it'll be very speculative and, you know, a lot of name calling and people, you know, all kinds of things. Like they do now, no big deal. So, but we don't care, you know, we don't care
That's right.
if, you know, the scientific community accepts it or not. We want to know what the hell's going on. I mean, that's what it's all about. I mean, you know, to say, you know, oh, you know, these guys are, you know, the trees have rocks and that's what, they have memory and that's what causes the residual haunt for the feathery realms. And, you know, that crap just doesn't cut it with me. I got to know exactly what's going on. And if wormholes do exist, which we're pretty sure they do, that would explain a residual haunt, not as a haunt at all, but as a connection between 2 places in time. So you would literally be witnessing a historical event occurring as it's occurring. That's what a residual haunt is. It's not a haunt at all. You're seeing history
That'd be
as
cool.
it's taking place. Because you're looking at a slice of reality from a period in history as it's happening where you're at. Because you're looking through a conduit from your time to that time.
Would you hypothesize that they're experiencing us in the same way that we are experiencing them?
I'm sorry, what?
So would you hypothesize that they would experience us in the same way that we're experiencing them? That where they
I don't think so. I think in that
where-
case, I mean, I think it's possible, yeah. I mean, I think they could, not necessarily when we are seeing them, but circumstances could certainly unfold where in their normal life, they would witness something from the future. And I'm not sure I haven't seen something like that in the past. I'm not sure I haven't had a glimpse of something in the future. And it's pretty well, while looking back in time seems to be a whole lot easier than looking forward in time physics-wise. Because there's so many things that can affect the future based on what happens today. Even if you did see the future, you're probably seeing a glimpse of a potential future based on current events.
Right.
So if something changed those current events, then that future obviously is going to change as well. So it's a little trickier looking forward in time. However, like I say, I mean, I think I've had experiences at some point in my life where I may have seen a glimpse of something in the future. And I'm sure they probably have too, but think about their level of understanding in, say, 1860 versus our level of understanding today. I mean, what would you think it was? You know, you'd be looking for a witch to burn or something.
Alien,
literally.
or something kind of.
So, I mean, when we take all these things into consideration and we look at them, you know, we have a whole lot of tools at our beck and call that when I started in this field in 1976, this stuff is unheard of. I mean, laptops, PCs didn't exist when I started this. You know, the fact that we have not only PCs, but we have laptops that are capable of doing what the original defense NORAD computer was capable of doing to control missile launches globally. We can do the same thing, and that computer filled up 6 rooms under a mountain.
Right.
And you can do the same thing now with a laptop. That's the same amount of processing power as those 6 rooms had 25, 30 years ago. So the technology available to us today is incredible. When I started out, my first EMF detector was a Korean War minesweeper that was used by the U.S. Army that had been rewired and turned into a passive receiver. And how a mine detector works is it sends a signal down, and then it has 2 coils, a transmitter coil and receiver coil. It sends a signal down, and whatever's reflected back tells it what kind of material is down there and how deep it is. Well, we converted the whole thing to where it just listened for EMF and tied both coils together, so we had this huge big listening coil. And then we fed it into an here's a word for you, a Tektronix 545B oscilloscope, which was a tube oscilloscope that weighed about 65 pounds. Now that was our EMF detector. Now you can imagine hauling something like that around. How we recorded Radova voices, or what we call today EVP,
And not cheap either. Those things were, even the more digital Tektronix stuff.
I had a TIAC A4010S reel-to-reel,
Yeah.
about a 60-pound recorder, reel-to-reel recorder.
1/4 inch.
Yep,
Yeah.
hauled that around with a Sony tube mixer and a microphone that Elvis used to sing in. You know, this big Shure block microphone. Arthur Godfrey used to have one on his desk when he wore his Hawaiian shirt.
One of those ribbon mics.
Yeah.
Does the size of the room, like that's a small room, does that have any effect?
Well, I have to turn the gain
Versus
down.
the room? Okay.
Yeah,
So that's the only difference.
See, I have the ability, what's great about the digital signal processor is I can add 10 million times the gain that you can get from a normal mixer.
Wow.
Like if you were just using like a regular old mixer like you would use in a PA system or something, you essentially can get about 100 dB of gain out of it. I can get probably 15, 20 million dB of gain at my fingertips with that. Now you don't want to do that with audio because you would blow the hell out of whatever you were trying to record with it. But with EMF, you're not dealing with the same type of energies that you're dealing with sound. So you can crank up the gain pretty good and you can bring the whole EMF noise floor. And like I say, we bring the whole thing up to 0 dB, and what we're seeing above this 0 dB, that's what's, think of this line here in the center at the background noise level. That thin line there is the background EMF noise. That's where we've established our reference point. So these spikes are what's coming in above that noise level.
And that's not us talking,
That's electromagnetic pulses.
Yeah, go ahead.
what's the armed and auto? What's that?
Mr. Rountree,
Right now we are recording data. Yes, sir.
won't my K2 do all that too? I believe that's yours.
Yeah, yeah.
And you can get a flashlight.
This is actually another device I developed, which is kind of a sort of portable version of an EMF sweeper. But what this essentially does
I saw.
is
These are EMF pulses.
when you're reading EMF, I have a sensor on the end here. And this sensor is essentially an EMF detector. And what it's doing is whatever EMF it's picking up, it's displaying on this screen. So right now we don't have a lot going on in here. But if we start looking around, I guarantee you we're going to find something. Like if you walk through here, actually, one of the
Look at there.
benefits of having this on a stick.
That's like a hunting
Having
gun.
you go into each room, and very easy to maneuver this thing around, check around for.
No, this is a real question. The K2 was just a joke. With that, I know with a millimeter cycles once every 3 seconds. A lot of people don't know that.
Right,
Or your average millimeter.
right.
Do you have to worry about how fast you move that?
No, because right now I'm sweeping, and let's see, I'm set at a level of 0.883 millivolts, so I'm reading a signal that's 0.883 millionths of a volt is what I'm reading. The time base on it is 20 milliseconds, so every 20 millisecond
Right.
is a full sweep.
Right.
So nothing's going to get past.
Right. I just thought.
So
I just
yeah,
wanted to-
the beauty of using laboratory grade technology is you get laboratory grade data.
Right. Well, and I mean,
Which is a good thing.
You can map in grid. You can still map and grid a room with a millimeter. You just
Sure.
have to. It has
Takes
to
more
take
time.
longer. Yeah.
It takes more time.
Does that do internal data logging so you can output it?
What this will do in this mode is you can save a screen capture.
Okay.
And you can save up to 10 screen captures, and then you can upload them to a PC later. Now, having said that, you can also, this has an optical data link where you can plug this into it's an optical sensor on one end and a USB on the other. So you can plug it straight into a laptop. It has software. You can bring up the software and see what's on the screen. You can plant this somewhere, run a cable back to your laptop and let it run, and you can sit there and literally capture the data all day long. So, great little tool. And if you want to spend real money, I mean, this will cost you about $300, runs anywhere from $299 to $399 depending on where you buy it. If you want to spend some real money, like about $1,500 and buy a Fluke, it'll literally sit there and give you real-time data logging after it. Well, you got to pay, you pay a lot of money.
Oh, that's just pocket change.
I used to do stuff on the networking side of things.
Right.
They're not cheap. You spend
No.
15 grand for it.
Yeah.
But like-
Fluke, you're going to spend a lot. Fluke is like Tektronix. You're going to spend a crap load of money for it.
And if you're watching the Spirit Board, the Spirit Lab on Facebook, if he ever mentions anything, don't buy it. No, if I mention it, you better buy it when I mention it.
Because it goes up $100.
Because
within
within 2 days,
within
yeah.
hours, it goes within.
Yeah, within 2
$100.
days it goes up tremendously. We keep trying to tell him to start putting on that he's playing with blocks. But the funny thing about it is we looked at a recording device the other day. What was it? Tracy, what was that recorder? It was an 8-track Tascam, right?
Yeah, Tascam.
On sale for $329.
Something for no, it was on sale for $419
Normally
just for one day, and then it
$1,600.
was $529.
Yeah, like instantly. I go, hey man, I post a link within an hour. It's a couple $100.
What we need to do is buy stock in a certain company, then have him mention it.
I'm telling you, it's weird. I think it's coincidental, but it just seems awful coincidental. I don't know.
The data logging software you use here for the rig, is that proprietary? Do you have some work?
Yeah, it actually, there's several different kinds that data logger will work with. I just bought the proprietary software because it was cheap. It was $99.
Okay. Did you have to do any custom?
No. All I had to
out
do
of
is
the box?
go in. Well, see, it comes with calibration software.
Okay.
So the first thing you do is you let it find it and you calibrate it. And then you can, after you calibrate it, then you just hook it up. And then you set what the parameters of each input you want. Like what I'm doing is using 0 to 10 volts as my control voltage. So I set each input at 0 to 10 volts. And that way it's measuring those coils from 0 to 10 volts. Now I could set it from 0 to 5 volts and it would be even more powerful, but the problem is you get too sensitive with it and then you hit something that's hardcore, you blow the hell out of your equipment. Yeah. So I kind of run it, when I'm not standing around it, I'll sit there and have it running like it is now where we've got these little spikes. But if I'm in there and I'm running long term, I'll crank it up to like 0 to 5 and then you really start seeing detail and stuff on it. But the beauty of it is even storing it at 1 to 10, you can come back, and the data is digital. So you can examine it, blow it up, and everything else, and it's still the details all there. So that's the good thing about it being digital. Is no matter what you do, you can come back, and that's what you're having. So this used to be where you carried this in one hand, and this in the other, and I had to wear a light on my head if I wanted a flashlight. I had one of these little skull cap things with a light on it, which, you look kind of geeky walking around with that. So I had this idea, why not look cool? Put it all on one thing so that you could literally, if you had to, use it with one hand. And it's a little cumbersome with one hand, but still, you can do it. And that essentially is my millimeter. Difference is I can see the waveform, what it looks like. I can figure out the frequency of it and the intensity of it. And what we have found, interestingly enough, is that there is a specific kind of looking waveform associated with what I want to call a disembodied consciousness. And Tracy, you here?
Yeah, I'm right here. You want to use me as an example?
What? What? We were just on an investigation at Centenary College because we're working on a real particularly nasty case about a murder victim that took place in 1886. 19-year-old was brutally raped and murdered. When we were near the area where her actual murder occurred, and no one knew where the exact spot was. Tracy was walking along, and Tracy's like, he grabbed her hair, he drug her through here, we followed this whole thing around, and then we got to this one spot, and before she had gotten to that spot, I had sweeped it, and I got some weird looking waveforms. And what these waveforms look like almost, if you ever seen the output of an electrocardiograph, where it shows a heartbeat, that's what it looked like. It was literally a spike here, junk, spike down here, junk, spike up here, junk, all the way through.
Let me go in there and see if it happens.
Huh?
And maybe go in there and see if it happens.
Yeah, the other thing is too, is you can read Tracy sometimes. Like a lot of times it'll happen around her. Pretty dead right now. Everything seems to be like.
Wait a minute.
Everything seems to be kind of holding its breath tonight. In here.
He'll be here in a minute.
Not a whole bunch, but a couple more.
Go check and see if they're here for the client or not.
No, I don't think anybody's in a big hurry.
No, I know. I just
Okay.
Oh, there it is. Boom.
See here?
Oh, there it goes.
To the right?
There it is. You want to catch that on film? That
They're always
waveform right there
Look at that.
is
Always.
associated with.
kids are always to my right.
Look at that. Oh my God, it's going crazy.
It is.
Okay, I'll put your
Please
ball
do me a
down.
favor
I
and
knew
send me a
if
copy of that.
I will, absolutely.
I knew if I touched the ball, it would come up.
Now,
Oh, wow.
there it is. If you guys want to look at it. Now, I'm literally getting. And the thing is when this happens, I don't get a frequency on it. It's such a bizarre combination of frequencies. There's no one frequency to trip the actual frequency meter.
I think he moved.
Hmm? It's still very strong.
Oh, come over here. I think there's one over here too. Yep, right here. Am I right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. I feel them. The energy, it like pins and needles on my skin.
Love it when that happens. Whole thing went on.
I do that to equipment, so if y'all's equipment dies, it's because I'm.
All right.
They're still there.
It is.
No, they're not like though.
But that
If you
particular.
notice, they're always that. Bring it up. Usually, if I know that it's a kid, they're usually always kids. For some reason, I don't know why, but I'm very attached to children, or
This-
they're usually attached to me.
This particular waveform we have found on numerous occasions where there's activity. And I never see it anywhere else. I have never been able to duplicate this waveform artificially at all.
Has it started until I came along?
No, that was the first time it did.
This is the
anything.
first time it did.
And he had taken it to different rooms too. He brought it in here because it didn't do anything in there either.
It's my brain. And I have no cell phone, no nothing on me at all. No electronics, nothing.
I've got an
Except
iPad
watch.
when you walk out.
No, that's not gonna do it.
The iPad's putting out 2.4 gig.
This is something totally different.
This is under 10 hertz. All this is occurring under 10 hertz.
Not
But it's
that-
all what you're measuring there is moving magnetic field, correct?
Yeah, it's EMF.
Yeah.
It's EMF. But it's a real funky looking kind of EMF. It has things very similar to like an electrocardiograph to it. In other words, it's picking up not just this variable frequency, low frequency waveform that's changing in front of our eyes here, but you see these spikes that are going up, positive and negative spikes.
Let me see if I move into another room, will it disappear?
It changes. It's not disappearing.
Give it a minute.
And this is the main frequency is varying between about 14 hertz and 7 hertz. And that was like about a 2 hertz that went through there. But the main frequency, which is the dark squiggly line, that's varying tremendously back and forth. I mean, when it gets smaller and denser, it's higher frequency. When it spreads out, it's lower frequency. We're dealing with the time period here on this grid. And obviously the more cycles within a time grid, the higher the frequency. So,
Now, does it just isolate to a particular spot, or like if you moved it to a different spot, is it going to just go back to normal?
well, let's go and let's check it out and see what it does.
Wow. Let me get it.
But is that picking up the ambient from outside?
Well,
Power line?
if it was, the closer I got to the window, the stronger it would be. And of course, there's nothing.
I'm going to trip over a toy with no line.
But, you know, good question, because you have to eliminate any kind of external power lines. However, I don't know of any power that we get in the U.S. that's between, 4, 7, and 14 or 15 hertz. It's all 60 hertz.
So did it disappear?
Yeah, once he moved it.
Okay.
Yeah, once I left that spot there, and I got an
That was
idea,
my
if I
curiosity.
Come back over here.
Now come right here.
See, there's nothing here now.
That's because it's moved over here by me again.
Now,
So,
with that being said, that's why I brought these up here. I'm very curious to see what these would do to that.
well, let's measure it.
Well,
Do it in here, or do you
Just sit it right here in this chair and see what it looks like.
when you were pointing toward Tracy, you started getting readings again, David.
Yeah. She does that. Now that's what you're generating right there, buddy.
What are those, Eric?
These are MF pumps. These are magnetic field pumps.
Okay.
There it is.
MF.
That's what the waveform looks like you're generating. It is 21.45 hertz. It's varying because you're, probably got a battery operated motor in there.
It looks different.
So
It does look
because
different.
it's a
It's
single
steady.
frequency, we're getting a readout, and it's telling us it's 21 point
Whatever.
varying 339 to 21 whatever hertz, but pretty steady in the 21 hertz category.
And it's not like sporadic like that other one was at
No,
all.
not at all.
And if you think this is like that spinning magnetic field, you do this.
Now, dude, put a second one up, and let's see what.
I have to put them on the floor to do that.
Well, put them on the floor. Somebody downstairs will go ape shit. Someone will start shitting on themselves downstairs. Now we have one. Now let's see what happens when we put two in there. Oh, look, we have two waveforms. And look at how they mix. They're slightly out of phase, and it causes all that funk to happen. But if we go and do proximity effect, we can say, okay, there's one. There's the other one. I like this one. It
Yeah.
moves.
It's
like that.
It's developing technology.
It won't hurt your ears.
So that being said, with the fluctuations that we were getting a moment ago, do you believe that that was because they were different fluctuations, that it was a different individual, or it was the same
Very
thing?
well could be. I mean, I can speculate that that's the case, but it's pure speculation because we haven't been able to prove a direct tie-in to the fact that all I can tell you is statistically, when we come across that waveform, there's generally activity involved.
Okay.
And so we haven't reached to the point where we can analyze it to the point of saying, oh yeah, that's Joe Schmuck, the guy that died here,
Yeah.
such and such. However, I don't think that's not impossible. I think that someday we may very well be able to pick up a bio pattern from someone and be able to, just like a fingerprint, identify an individual with it. We're doing that kind of now with EVP, where we're taking voice analysis. If we have a recording of a person when they were alive, of their voice, and we get a recording of an EVP that we suspect may be from that person, we can compare those two wave files and find markers that are common in the EVP and in the voice file that we have on record. Then we can positively identify that EVP to that person.
Mm-hmm.
Now, we're at the very infantile stage of doing that because most of the people that I have voice files on are still very much alive.
Yeah.
But if they do pass away, I have deals with them like, okay, when you die, come back
And haunt
leave
me.
an EVP.
Come back and haunt me.
Yeah, because then if I can show your voice print plus an EVP we get after you're dead, and there could be a match, then we've definitely just proved there's life after death.
Yeah.
There's no doubt about that.
Yeah.
That's pretty damn solid evidence.
Yeah.
So, and the other thing too, like the other reason I wanted to bring these up here is you saw how strong the waveform was with that. Well, when you see the other waveform, you see how little energy you're actually detecting, energy-wise, how
Yeah.
small it really truly is.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
So that's why you, like David said, that's why you have to have lab quality equipment to get lab quality results, because if you walk around with a stud finder, you're only going to find studs.
That's exactly right. I mean, that's the whole thing. You know, most people go around using equipment that's designed to do something that they're not doing. No one's making a ghost hunting piece of equipment. They're calling it that, but it's based on a piece of equipment designed to do something else. So, and there's nothing wrong with that, because what we've done is we've turned it around. Instead of looking for ghosts, we're looking for signatures in the environment that are different than normal. Because I believe this: if we can hear it, feel it, touch it, smell it, taste it, experience it in any way, it has to follow the laws of physics. Has to. Or it's not in our reality. So that makes it really easy if you think about it. It's got to follow the laws of physics. So the trick is, how is it following the laws of physics? And that's where we're going to find the answer. You know, it's in science. It's not in the feathery realms. Well, in spite of what people will tell you, oh, you know, science will never figure this stuff out, you know, because, you know, it's all fucking magic. Really? Okay.
How do you feel about this? That's a good question for you. How do you feel? Don't you think that part of the next evolution of things that happen paranormally are going to be about the investigator? Monitoring the investigator?
This is something, yeah, well, we're already starting to do this. Even in quantum mechanics, there's a thing called the observer effect. And what it does in quantum mechanics is it has to do with wave-particle duality. Is it a wave? Is it a particle? Well, until it's measured or observed, it could be either. But because of a human intervention, the observer, the act of measuring the particle or the wave collapses the field and fixes it into one form or another. So it's either a wave or it's going to be a particle. But until that point, the probability is it could be either. And that's what's so weird about quantum mechanics, and why a lot of people that are like real physicists don't get quantum mechanics. They think it's crazy stuff. They think it's all voodoo and stuff. So you have to kind of think outside of the box to really understand it. But what quantum mechanics says is that there's a world of possibilities out there. In other words, you could walk into this wall 1,000,000 times and skin your forehead and bounce off of it. But 1,000,001, your molecules will line up exactly with the spacing of the molecules with that, and you'll walk through the damn wall. That's what quantum mechanics tells us. Now, I don't feel like walking into a wall 1,000,000 times, although I've done it a few times. But
I've tried it mostly with floors.
The point is that in quantum mechanics, everything has to do with not possibilities, but probabilities. What's the probability of something happening? And when you start looking at the universe that way, it starts to make a little more sense. Then the things that you see, maybe they're not so paranormal after all. Maybe they're paranormal, meaning that they're normal, but we don't understand it quite yet. And that's what I think we're dealing with here. Do I think we survived death? Yeah, I do. There's enough anecdotal evidence out there that seems to suggest that something about us survives after death. And yeah, I know anecdotal evidence in and of itself is not very strong, but there comes a point where there's just so damn much of it, you have to give it a little weight. Now, if you talk to Dr. Raymond Moody, who's like an expert on the near-death experience and that whole aspect, I mean, these are people who have been doing this for 30 or 40 years, and they've been dealing with hundreds of case histories, and they're getting the same stories over and over again. There's got to be something to it. And I know that, you know, scientists explain away this near-death experience as, well, you know, when the brain is robbed of oxygen, you start hallucinating and this, that, and the other thing. What about someone that was dead for over 15 minutes? I mean, they had like flatline brain activity. There's no hallucination, there's no nothing going on. And they come back and they're normal. There's cases of that all the time. And they're all reporting the same stuff. So you have to give it a little bit of credence, even though you may not buy into it hook, line, and sinker. You have to say, well, you know, there's something to it.
Well, what about some of the work Persinger did with the God helmet?
Persinger, you know, we interviewed him on our podcast, The Devil's Advocate. Dr. Stephen O'Rourke and I interviewed him. And, you know, we had this major disagreement, and then we realized we weren't really disagreeing at all. You know, it was like we were having this major disagreement because he was saying, oh, well, there's, you know, these frequencies you're measuring are coming from the environment. I'm like, well, yeah, you're right, but they're not initiating in our environment. It's like a local effect, but it's a non-local source for it. I said, tell me what in the natural environment is generating, you know, 2.7 hertz. Well, it's coming from somewhere, is what he said. Yeah, exactly, it is. It's coming from somewhere else besides here. You know, that's the trick.
And the God helmet, if you guys don't know, is basically a football helmet with very small solenoids on it.
These little sensors like you use to bug a telephone with. It's a little coil sensor, plugs into a device where they will sit there and feed a microcurrent of EMF to each one of these and kind of rotate this field around in a general area on the brain, and they stimulate a paranormal experience in the individual. And it's absolutely generated by this EMF, which brings about how much of a haunted experience is actually a haunted experience, or the emerging EMF from the wormhole that's forming to allow this interaction to occur. How much of it is experienced within yourself from that stimulation, and how much of it is from some external source? That has to be a factor. So again, you know, it's going to come a time when we're going to have all of our people wired up. So we're monitoring them and what's going on in their body as much as we're monitoring the environment as well. And maybe we'll be able to determine how much of it, and answer once and for all, how much of it is induced by the environment, how much of it is actually, you know, alien to the environment coming into it.
And if you can induce it, why can't you? Why is it so hard to believe that you couldn't be sensitive to it to begin with? Because everybody's different.
Sure.
Everybody has different sensitivities.
Well, and the beauty of it is if we can understand the dynamic, why can't we recreate it?
Exactly.
So what happens if we can suddenly learn how to generate a wormhole? Well, here's what happens. Suddenly we can travel to Andromeda for summer vacation. Suddenly we have an unending source of free energy. Suddenly, you know, all of a sudden we can start, you know, farming energy from adjacent universes at will. I mean, we can travel. We could travel different places on the planet Earth. You know, you could step into like a little box like the TARDIS, and you could end up in, you know, Mongolia 30 seconds later, just because you're utilizing wormhole technology.
You could pop to Mongolia for dinner and pop back to
Or
Paris for
you could go dinosaur hunting in Precambrian times, you know?
I think I'd pass on that one.
You know, so, I mean, the possibilities are endless of what the technology can do. It would literally revolutionize the human race. So, all because we're trying to figure out what the hell's going on with spooky houses, man.
Yeah, pretty cool. Now
Anybody got any questions?
the thing Tracy brought up, what was that?
The thing she brought up?
The piece of equipment that had 2 microphones attached to it.
Oh,
That is the Rountree Voice Phenomena Recorder.
That is a Tascam DR40, and it records EVPs.
Okay. Is it more sensitive, David?
It's definitely more sensitive because we use a real special kind of microphone on it, but what's really cool is it's a 4-track recorder. It has 2 built-in condenser mics, which are deaf to EVP. Condenser mics do not hear EVP. So, you've got a controlled pair of channels. You've got a set of channels that are not going to control, they're not going to record EVP at all. And then you've got the 2 channels with these special little mics on them here, these Audex mics, that's going to record sound and EVP.
so there's mics here.
Now those mics don't record anything.
Yeah.
They record
Yes.
sound only.
Sound
They
only.
won't record EVP.
These
Okay.
record EVPs.
So what that means is instead of listening to 7.5 hours of boring audio,
Yeah.
try to find your EVPs.
And you just push
You
record.
put it in your software
and
and
let
you
it
look
go.
at the 2 files and you see the one that's got the niche on it down here, and you go to that niche and you listen to the niche. And that niche is probably where your EVP is because
Oh,
it's
that'd
not
make-
in the other.
And then you just download it, and then, I mean, it's
That'd make life
no more
easier.
hours and hours.
No.
Oh my god.
It
so
keeps you
simple.
from having pareidolia, because if you sit there and listen to that white noise for hours and hours,
Yes.
and then you hear something,
Anybody have a
you're gonna
flashlight?
hear like Jesus parting the waters. You're gonna hear like,
Right.
you know, I just cut a fart. You're gonna hear
I got a lighter.
all kinds of things that aren't there because you're
Right.
suffering from pareidolia at that point.
That's
So David, when will
awesome.
this be out on the market for us to purchase as paranormal investigators?
Well, you know what? On the website, we tell you how to put it together yourself from stuff you buy off the shelf.
That's right.
Look at there, Shane. Did you hear Mr. Rountree tell us that?
Yeah, because if I was to put this stuff together and sell it, I could make like tons of money and really build some really cool stuff. But I think what's important is to get more and more people putting the stuff in use in the field, so that we've got more data to compare.
Yeah.
So that we can find
You
out
just
the
set
truth
this
and
in
get
a
the
room
answers
and just
to it.
let it go.
Instead of, you know, me getting ridiculously
You can
wealthy
review
and
all your
talking
notes
people into
instead of
using
hours.
flashlights to talk to the dead.
That would make audio review minutes instead
Like,
of hours.
yeah.
God is great. I mean, this runs.
The other good thing about this-
$199.
Let me interject
This
something.
is-
You pay a lot of extra money for an EVP recorder that allows you to hear what you're recording, only it's delayed.
Mm-hmm.
It's not delayed in this, and you're hearing exactly what the mic's hearing.
Okay.
You buy a good digital
I can actually
recorder,
hook up
you're
my
hearing exactly what you're
earphones
recording.
and
Yeah.
hear.
With our recorders too, you can we have the more expensive
But it's
Sony brand. You can
better
plug it in,
to
headphones in, and you
just
hear
have
what you're
something
saying as you're saying, and it's amped up.
Oh yeah, it's just like these guys that are selling these, real-time EVP recorders.
Yeah, you're wasting your money, and there's a
All they're
delay.
doing is they're taking a recorder like this and putting a digital delay circuit so that it's delaying it slightly, so you think like you're doing something.
Yeah, you're not.
Trick.
Yeah, it's a waste of money.
He's back.
So you said on the website it says how to build that?
On Spirit Laboratories website.
Actually,
It's all-
Paul Browning has a video tutorial on YouTube. And if you go to my website, to the equipment page, and you go down there, you can click on his video and he walks you through how to set it up, how to adjust it to set the right values in the recorder, and everything. He tells you how to put it together, the whole 9 yards.
Yeah.
So he's got a YouTube instructional video. And this all came from, I had this huge device that sat on an 8-foot table. That when we were trying to prove that EVP was being created by EMF, we were recording with software that's called Cubase LE. It's designed to do like 16 audio tracks and mix down your own professional recordings. Well, we had like 4 coils going into it, 4 condenser mics, and 4 dynamic mics. And of course, we were getting EVP on the coils, and we were getting EVP on the condenser mics, and we were getting neither on the condenser mics. So the condenser mics and the dynamic mics were definitely different. One had sound only, the other one had sound and EVP. The coil only had EVP. So we were able to compare all 3 of those, and pretty soon it was real easy to see that EMF was literally creating EVP. Because we could see the coil signal looked just like the signal we were getting on the dynamic microphone. The dynamic microphone has got a coil in here. So essentially, it's going to pick up. You take a dynamic microphone and you hold it over by a light switch that's turned on, you're going to get a hum through it. Because you're going to be picking up the 60 cycles coming through there. Same thing. That's how you get EVP. That's exactly how EVP is picked up. Because what a microphone does is it has a diaphragm in here that measures acoustic energy, which is physical mechanical energy created by air movement. It moves that coil with the vibration of what you're saying.
This is perfect.
And then the coil moves in a magnet, and that converts that mechanical energy into EMF so that the recorder can pick it up. So all the recorder's doing is bypassing the need for the diaphragm and picking straight up through the coil in the microphone. The recorder sees it the same way as it sees sound.
That's
So
amazing.
the beauty of it is your audio equipment will process EMF in the audio spectrum. Good trick to know. That means if you've got a mixer and a couple of coils, you can hook the coils up to your mixer, crank them up, and look at them on an oscilloscope. Or record them in your audio software. And come back and look at the waveform.
That's amazing.
It's interchangeable once it becomes electric. Once it goes into the box, it's interchangeable. EMF and audio are the same.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it's great.
You can tell how excited I am because if you've ever ran, 6 recorders for 8 hours and had to listen to all that audio.
Try like 22
Hey,
different
you know what?
DVRs.
We were at a place, and the bad thing when you have activity that is, oh my God, really bad.
Where's that flashlight?
We went to, what was that place called? Catfish Plantation.
Catfish Plantation.
This thing kept going on and off by itself. When I went in, I had, like 6 files. I had 234 on one thing.
It was turning on and off.
It was
by
turning
itself.
on and
Wow.
off by itself, and I hadn't even had time to go through them at all.
That's
And then
Wow.
the other one had 200 and something too. They were totally full, so I just deleted them all and downloaded them. But it'd go on, and then it'd go off. It'd go on, and it'd go off all by itself.
Wow.
It was weird.
Did it all night. We have a video on YouTube about it showing it.
Yeah.
It's
Wow.
unbelievable.
That's amazing.
So that's the only bad thing is when they want to play with your toys.
So anybody else got any questions?
Not at the moment. I'm sure I'll think of one by tomorrow. Or 2 or
Well, I was
5.
thinking one like after the fact.
Or 20. You notice I've had questions for you since I interviewed you too. Like
Yeah, you've been doing your homework.
I've had them built up for a while. I'm just gonna let you know. I've been holding them in.
That's good. You know?
It's good. It's all about
If I can inspire you to think, then I've done my job.
Yeah. Well, I've always been a
Get you to
thinker,
think
but
about it.
you're getting me thinking deeper.
Well, and that's what it takes. I mean, obviously, the stuff that's been done for the last 20 years is not getting us any closer.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you can only jump up and down and squeal about an EMF spike so many times before it kind of wears off.
Mm-hmm.
What's the next step? Well, the next step is, okay, well, we got an EMF spike. Well, what frequency is it?
Yeah.
Okay, well, what's the amplitude? What does the actual waveform look like? Ooh, that's a weird looking waveform.
Yeah. It's not natural. Yeah.
Suddenly, all of a sudden, things start making sense. Now, that waveform looks almost like an electrocardiogram sometimes.
Yeah.
Now, are
Like
we
a
getting
heartbeat.
some type of biofield energy that we're measuring? Some kind of residual biofield energy, maybe?
Mm-hmm.
And can that be like a footprint or a fingerprint? Can it actually have some clue to an ID of somebody? Maybe.
Yeah.
You know, these are things that are going to take years to figure out. But hey, you know, got to start somewhere. What gets me is, and what floats my boat is knowing that somebody's going to try something different just because they saw something I did.
Mm-hmm.
Because then they're going to come back to me and they're going to say, you know, we did such and such, and we got this. And then someone sends me a file and they go, and I look at it and I go, yeah, I've gotten that before too. Now all of a sudden we're correlating evidence at the same level. And they're getting something. See, if someone walks away from me empowered to do something more with what they're doing, that's cool because it's going to pay off back to me down the road. Because someone's going to give me evidence that's going to support what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Or shoot it in the leg so that I don't waste any more time with it.
Yeah.
You know, I may be doing something that's very artifactual, you know, something that's, you know, I'm missing that's, you know, I'm generating this stuff for my own amusement or whatever, who knows. So I look at it like that and I think, you know, here's another thing I got too. This is sitting here measuring
The gamma, right?
gamma radiation. Every one of those spikes is a gamma spike. It's a lot less now, so the activity's kind of shut down.
And that's all out of the room where you have the 4.
Yeah. So, interesting stuff though.
It
I
is.
mean, when you start thinking about it, if this stuff happens and it has the impact, it's got to leave a signature on the environment.
Yeah.
So why don't we look at the environment and monitor all these different aspects of it and see what happens? So that's what we did.
Mm-hmm.
And all of a sudden we're like going, holy shit, you know, this is going on.
Yeah.
You know, the first breakthrough we had was when we figured out that EMF was creating EVP. And the next logical question was, okay, where's it coming from?
Mm-hmm.
What's the source? So we started looking and we're thinking, this shit seems to just be like popping into a room, you know, from nowhere.
Mm-hmm.
You know, all of a sudden you're standing over here in the middle of a room and you're getting EVP, but the person sitting over there isn't. Why?
Mm-hmm.
They're only a couple feet apart. Why isn't this guy getting it on his recorder, but this guy is?
Mm-hmm.
So then you start looking around and you're starting to say, you know, oh, well, this guy's also complaining about being cold. Then you start putting 2 and 2 together and you're thinking, you just happen to be at the right place at the right time. And all of a sudden you get that one piece of information that says, you know, shit, barometric pressure dropped here too. So you've got 4 little seemingly insignificant, non-related pieces of equipment give you this information. And so now you're thinking, something's going on.
Mm-hmm.
Something is changing the environment there. And it's changing it enough that we can measure it. That's cool as shit. Okay, now what is that telling us? Okay, back to the drawing board. So now I developed this. I said, okay, what if this is an emerging thing? What if this EMF is emerging into the environment? If we could find that emergence point, shit, man, that would be like where it's happening.
Yeah.
That would be where everything is happening, is at that emergence point.
Mm-hmm.
So I started thinking about it. I said, you know, I have to do something like a kind of like a radio triangulation thing, only do it for low frequency EMF. And that's what I did.